Hey guys, in this video I will show you how to do rotations when the center of rotation is not necessarily the origin. But in order to do that, first we must remember how to do rotations when the center of rotation is the origin. So basically we've learned in the past that these are the rules. If you're going to do a 90-degree clockwise rotation, all right, clockwise means in this direction like a clock, then what happens is the x and y switch places, but the x value changes signs. If you're going to do a rotation around the origin that is 90 degrees counterclockwise, meaning this direction, then the x and y still switch places, but now it's the y value that changes signs. And if you do a 180-degree rotation, it doesn't matter, clockwise, counterclockwise, same thing. The coordinates do not switch places. All that happens is the signs change. Okay? Notice that a 90-degree clockwise rotation is the same thing as a 270-degree counterclockwise rotation. And a 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation is the same thing as a 270-degree clockwise rotation. So, just in case it comes up. So, memorize these rules. So, just as a sort of a warm-up here, let's do the first problem by doing a rotation around the origin. So, if you're doing a rotation around the origin, all you have to do is follow the rules that I just reminded you about. So let's write down the original coordinates. So for example, look at point B. The coordinates of point B are 3, negative 3. 3, negative 3. Okay? So if we're going to do a 90 degrees clockwise rotation, the coordinates should switch places, but the x value should change signs. So the y value is going to stay the same for this. So see the negative 3? It's going to go first and stay the same. The x value of 3 is going to go second, and it's got to change signs. So this should be the coordinates of B prime. And you know what? I feel like I should go ahead and write down the rule right next to this. So for a clockwise rotation, x, y becomes. And remember, the y value stays the same. They're going to switch places. The y value stays the same, but the x value changes signs. So I show it that way. So that's the rule for a 90-degree clockwise rotation around the origin. Okay, so let's look at the point R next. So point R is 2, negative 2. All right, so when we do the rotation to find R prime, all right, these coordinates have to switch places, but the x value is going to change. The y value is going to stay the same. So see this y value of negative 2? It's going to go first. And see the x value of positive 2? It's going to become negative 2. Okay, and finally let's do the same thing for the point W, which is the point 1, negative 5. That's going to become W prime. And so these are going to switch, but the y value is going to stay the same. So that y value is going to stay the same. The x value is going to change to the opposite. So there you go. All right, let's go ahead and just plot these points on the graph, the image. So negative 3, negative 3 would be right here. Okay, so that's your B prime. Negative 2 is going to be right here. So that's R prime. And then negative 5, negative 1 is going to be right here, so that is W prime. And we can just connect these points for the image. Okay, so that's how you rotate 90 degrees clockwise about the origin. All right, and you can really just visualize, you know, a 90-degree clockwise rotation. Imagine taking this and turning it this way. And it's going to go from this quadrant to this quadrant. Okay, anyway, now, how do we do it when it is not the origin? So we're going to have to do some extra steps in here. The bottom line is this. Focus on the location of the new center, 1, 1. Okay, so here is the new center. I'm going to move this entire graph, the center and the triangle. I'm going to move it in such a way that the center lands at the origin. So basically, I need to subtract, you know, in order to make this into the origin, wouldn't I have to subtract 1 from both of these? And then that would turn this into the origin. I'm going to do the same thing to all of these points, okay? So basically, I'm going to move the entire graph left 1 and down 1. So that would move, this point would move to the origin, and all of these points would move in the same way. So these are the original 3 points, B, R, and W. I've written down their coordinates. So these are the 3 steps that I'm going to do. Step 1, I'm going to subtract the center. That's what I was describing. In order to turn this point into the origin, I would have to subtract 1 from both coordinates. So I'm going to do that to all of these points and see what I get. So let's do that now. Okay, so I'm going to get some new points by subtracting 1 from everything. So I'm going to go -1 everywhere. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay, so that's going to give us 2, -4. And this is going to become 1, -3. And this is going to become 0, -6. Okay, so there we've done step 1 right now. Now it's time to do step 2. Using these points, we're going to do a rotation around the origin. And remember, the rule, when you do a 90 degrees clockwise rotation, you switch them, but the x value will have the opposite sign. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to switch these. The y value is going to stay the same. So see this -4? That's going to go first. See the 2? It's going to become a -2. All right, see that -3? The y value doesn't change. That's going to go first. See the +1? That's going to become a -1. Okay, see that -6? That stays the same. The 0, okay, the opposite of 0 is still 0, so that's just going to be that. All right, so now we've done step 2. We've done the rotation around the origin. All right, now it's time for step 3. We moved everything left 1 and down 1, and then we did the rotation. Now we need to move everything back. Okay, so since we subtracted 1 from everything, in order to fix it, we need to add 1 now. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to add 1 to everything. So I'm going to do +1 to everything. And this will give me the final answers. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and say B prime because this is the actual image. So this is going to give me -3 and -1. And then for R prime, that's going to be -2 and 0. And then for W prime, that's going to give me -5 and 1. Okay, and then now I can just graph those points. All right, so -3, -1 would be right here. And that's going to be my B prime. -2, 0 is right here. And that'll be my R prime. And -5, 1. Okay, -5, 1 is going to be right here. And that's going to be my W prime. Okay, and then you can just connect them up. And that's how you do it. In problem number 3, they want us to describe what we just did in complete sentences. And we're sort of comparing and contrasting what happened in problem number 1, which was a rotation around the origin, versus problem number 2, where we rotated around a point that was not the origin, 1, 1. So here's my description. In problem number 1, I simply used the rules for rotating 90 degrees clockwise around the origin. XY becomes y negative x. In problem 2, I had to subtract the coordinates of the center of rotation from all the vertices before using the rotation rules. Then I had to add the coordinates of the center back to all of the vertices to get the final image. Here again in problem number 4, we are rotating around a point that is not the origin. We're rotating around the point -1, 1. So we're going to have to do the extra steps of moving this point and all of the rest of the points to the origin. So what would it take to cancel this out? What would it take to turn this center into the origin 0, 0? Hopefully you can see that I would have to add 1 to each of these, +1, +1. All right, in other words, I would have to move this point up 1 and right 1 to get it to the origin. So really what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm going to wind up moving all of these points up 1 and right 1, okay, before I do the rotation. But I don't need the graph for that. I'm just going to do it mathematically. So as you see, in order to turn the center into the origin, I would have to add 1 to everything. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to add 1 to everything. So +1 to all coordinates. So that's going to give me, these 3 points that you see here, that's going to give me 4, -2. And 3, -1, and 2, -2. All right? So, I have canceled out the center. I've moved it to the origin. And I've done the same thing to all of the points. So now I can go ahead and use my rules of rotation. The rules for doing a rotation of 180 degrees are you just change the sign. So xy becomes -x, -y. This is what the rule would be if you were rotating around the origin. So we've moved the center to the origin, so now we can use this rule. So I'm going to change all the signs. So this is going to become -4, +2. And this will become -3, +1. And this will become -2, +2. And now we are ready for the final answer. Okay, so now that we've done the rotation, we have to put it back where we started from. So we just added 1 to everything at the beginning, so that changed the graph. You know, we moved everything up 1 and over 1. Now we have to move everything back after having done the rotation. So since I added 1, since I did +1 and -1, if I want to fix it, I'm going to have to do -1 to everything now. Okay, this just puts everything back the way it was. So that's going to give me my final answer. So this will be, I'll go ahead and call it now B prime, and this will be -5, comma 1. And then my R prime will be -4, comma 0. And then my W prime will be -3, comma 1. And then I'll just graph these points and so we can see what it looks like. Oops, when I plotted my points, it did not have the right shape, so I realized I must have made a careless mistake. So I looked back through, and I simply can't read my own handwriting. When I looked at this number right here, I thought it was a -3, so then that would make this a -2, but that's not a -3. This point W is the point 1, comma -5. So this is supposed to be a -5. So for that reason, when I added 1, that should have made a -4 right here. So let me just go back and fix that. When you guys were watching the video, you're probably like, no, that's a -4. So that's a -4. So then when we change the signs, this will be a -2, and then this will be a +4. And then when I subtract 1 from everything, I'm going to get -3, comma +3. Okay, so now I can fix my graph and put -3, +3. Okay, that's better. So there is your rotation around the center, -1, -1. And you can just see it happening. You can imagine this turning around this center and landing right there. Okay, number 5, we're going to do a rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise around the point -1, comma -4. So first we have to move the point -1, -4 to the origin. In other words, what would it take to turn this into 0, 0? Well, I have a -1. I would have to add 1 to make this into a 0. And I would have to add 4 to make this into a 0. Okay? In other words, I would have to take the point -1, -4. Okay, this is the center of rotation. I would have to move this right 1 and up 4. Okay, that's what I'm really saying. Anyway, if I am going to add 1 and add 4 to the center, I need to do that to all of the coordinates, all of the vertices. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add 1 and add 4 to everything. And that is going to give me a new triangle. So this will give me 4, 1 and 3, 2 and 2, comma, negative 1. Now I can use my rules, the same rules I would use if I were rotating around the origin, because now I have moved the center to the origin along with the triangle. So now you have to imagine that this picture is centered at the origin. So now I can use my rules. And one of the rules that we memorized was, if you're doing a 90-degree rotation, the coordinates are going to switch places, but, okay, if we're moving counterclockwise, the x value is going to stay the same, but the y value is going to change signs. So the y value is going to come first, and it's going to become a negative y. It's going to change signs. The x value is going to go second, and it's going to stay the same. When you go counterclockwise, the x value stays the same. If you go 90 degrees clockwise, the y value stays the same. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, so I'm going to switch these, and I'm going to change the sign of the y value. So see that 1? It's going to go first, but it'll be a negative 1. And then I just keep the 4. See that 2? It's going to go first and become a negative 2. The 3 will stay the same. You see that negative 1? It's going to become a positive 1, and the 2 will stay the same. Okay? So now we have rotated 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin. But this is not the final answer because we moved the graph away from what it really was. So before we can have the final answer, we have to move it back again. So when I moved the graph in the first place, I added 1 and I added 4. If I want to fix that, I'm going to have to subtract 1 and subtract 4 to undo what I did. So now I'm going to subtract 1 and subtract 4 from everything. So minus 1, minus 4, minus 1, minus 4. And this should give me the final answer. Okay, so now I can go ahead and call this B prime because this will be the actual image. Negative 1 minus 1, so that's going to be negative 2. 4 minus 4, that's 0. Okay, R prime. Negative 2 minus 1, that's negative 3. 3 minus 4, that's negative 1. And then W prime. 1 minus 1 is 0. 2 minus 4, that's negative 2. Okay, now I'm just going to plot these points to show you the image. So there you go. That's what the image would look like after this 90-degree counterclockwise rotation around the point negative 1, negative 4. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.